It's a person standing there.
No, it's not.
Dude, have you seen what I've seen right now?
This is not just another campfire story. This is an investigation. From native legends to scientific analysis, thermal footage to DNA labs, we've followed the evidence deep into the forest, where folklore meets biology and fear meets fact. We'll meet seasoned researchers, survivalists, skeptical scientists, and ordinary people who encountered the extraordinary. Because the question is no longer if people are seeing something, it's what they're seeing, and why it doesn't want to be found. When we talk about physical evidence, we can't ignore the many footprints, hair samples, and documented sightings scattered across North America. But with so many stories and samples, how do we separate fact from fabrication? To explore that question, we turn to one of the foremost experts in the field, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, a professor of anatomy and anthropology with decades of field research.
A little bit across this point here, but there's no indication of an arch. It's flat, and that assists in the distribution of weight through more surface area. Given their much greater mass, which is a cube of the linear dimension.
Dr. Meldrum highlights the anatomical uniqueness of Sasquatch footprints. He explains that the tracks often show no arch, which is an efficient adaptation for weight distribution, an advantage for a creature potentially weighing several hundred pounds. Unlike humans, whose feet are adapted for walking on flat surfaces, a Sasquatch would need stability for traversing rugged terrain, dense brush, and forests. Long toes and a high-stepping gait help them navigate these obstacles, unlike humans trained to walk on sidewalks and smooth floors.
Cycle in a much different manner than we do. Given their long toes, and their shorter legs, they also have a tendency to have a high-stepping gait, which is also an advantage when you're walking through rough and irregular terrain. We get trained walking on sidewalks and flat floors to barely lift our foot sufficient to clear our toes on that.
One of the most compelling cases comes from Bossburg, Washington, where two separate sets of tracks were cast. One set appears typical, but the other displays extreme deformities, twisted toes, off-angle alignment, and signs of past trauma. The distortions could indicate a crushing injury or even a neurological disorder, such as spinal nerve damage. The placement of key anatomical landmarks within the print, perfectly in line with the biomechanics of a large primate, adds to its credibility.
So that it doesn't leave an imprint, but really telling, here are these two bulges on this side. Now, the position of these bulges in a modern human would be way back here on a foot of this length, because we have a disproportionately shorter calcaneus. The greatly elongated calcaneus, for greater leverage, massive weight, corresponding to massive weight of this creature, displaces these landmarks more distally or further down the foot.
Dr. Meldrum argues that the odds of a hoaxer in 1972 creating such biologically accurate, pathology-specific prints without expert knowledge are incredibly slim. In fact, the precise bone structure and midfoot flexibility shown in these casts would be almost impossible to fake without advanced anatomical understanding. If Sasquatch doesn't exist, then all of this intricate and consistent evidence would have to be fabricated, something that, scientifically, defies imagination.
Walking and running, and especially the big toe. If we have a foot that has a midfoot flexibility, then when the heel comes up, like this, the weight's not concentrated under the ball of the foot. Instead, it's under the entire midfoot. If Sasquatch does not exist, as the skeptics and critics would assert, would maintain, then all of the footprint evidence out there has been hoaxed. And of course, we know.
Deep in the heart of Texas lies the Twin Rivers Wolf and Wolf Dog Sanctuary, a quiet refuge that has become anything but peaceful. Kathy and Jerry, the caretakers, began noticing eerie events: blood-curdling screams in the night, strange howls, and massive footprints near the dog enclosures. Dogs that were once excited during feeding times would freeze, staring into the woods, alerting to something unseen. As time passed, the encounters escalated. Heavy cement blocks placed at the gates were mysteriously moved. Objects went missing. Hair samples, coarse, orangey tan, and long, were found snagged beneath the edge of a volunteer's 40-foot camper, accompanied by massive, three-toed footprints with deep claw marks. Despite the growing tension, the atmosphere never felt threatening. The sanctuary's dogs often responded with mournful howls, as if answering distant calls echoing through the woods. Whatever visited the sanctuary wasn't afraid of the dogs. It moved in and out with ease. Kathy, who's lived alone on the property for years, says she's never been afraid. She doesn't know exactly what's out there. But with footprints, hair, and unexplainable sounds, she's sure of one thing: something is watching, always near, and it's not going away.
I was out here in the middle of the night. I often come out here and check on the dogs. I heard something making hideous noises. It sounded kind of like something was getting, and I heard something scream so loud that it like echoed and literally vibrated the air. And it, to me, I mean, it sounded demonic, but it kind of sounded like King Kong in the movie.
Randy Brisson is a veteran Bigfoot explorer who, during one of his expeditions, collected several anomalous hair samples and photographed tree twists, small shelters woven from branches, each containing reddish-brown hairs. One particularly striking sample came from a cluster of branches behind a stump. Convinced of its importance, Randy submitted this red hair and 3 additional samples to Dr. Melba Ketchum's lab, the team behind the controversial Sasquatch Genome Project. But he didn't stop there. To ensure rigor, he forwarded the same red-brown sample to 2 independent facilities: the University of British Columbia's DNA lab in Vancouver and the Paleo DNA lab, experts in ancient and forensic DNA. Both labs meticulously screened for contamination, ruling out Randy's own DNA and known animal profiles before analysis. The results were remarkable. All 3 labs reported identical findings. The hair shafts were 3 times thicker than human hair, and while the maternal DNA, JAMU, matched human sequences, the paternal lineage returned no known hits. It was entirely unknown. In other words, the mitochondrial DNA was human, but the Y chromosome, or equivalent, came from an unclassified primate. This is as close as we've come, without a body, to biological proof of Sasquatch. These renowned laboratories, each at the top of their field, have provided data that demands further study. The mystery isn't closed, it's only deepened. We begin our investigation deep in the heart of Bigfoot territory, with none other than ex-military survivalist Russell Accord. Russell is no stranger to the wilderness. He's trained to read landscapes, detect subtle changes, and spot what others overlook. But on this particular day, he finds something that stops him in his tracks.
My next step is to follow the terrain and start looking around the area for any more unusual markings. There's a reason why these trees are placed here.
A nest, not just a random tangle of branches or wind-fallen debris. This structure is fresh, so fresh that whatever made it could have been there minutes before his arrival. The moss was still damp, twigs freshly broken, the air heavy with a pungent, unmistakable smell, raw meat. Something had been here, something big.
What is that? Look at this thing.
Russell moves closer, his military instincts on high alert. He studies the shape of the shelter, a hut-like formation, made entirely of long branches, intricately placed and woven together. Yes, the forest holds many oddities, but this wasn't random. This was intentional. And here's where things get strange. This structure wasn't some animal scrape or accident of nature. It was large enough for a grown human to crawl inside and lie down. The branches weren't broken naturally. They were stacked, selected, shaped. There was a method to it. Purpose. Russell pauses. Even a bear, massive as it is, doesn't build like this. Gorillas? They nest, yes, but not like this. Not here, not in these woods, and certainly not with this scent. This wasn't instinctual behavior. This was intelligence at work. He calls it what it looks like, a Bigfoot nest. We will talk about skeptics later. We will hear their analysis as well. But what creature in these remote woods is building homes? Because if Russell is right, then Bigfoot isn't just surviving. It's living here, and it knows we're getting closer.
It's not just a downed tree. The top of this thing has branches almost like they were placed here.
But that's not it. We're not just here to show you a pile of branches and call it proof. Russell Accord isn't satisfied with speculation. He's here for a face-to-face encounter. This is more than curiosity. It's an active investigation. Something, or someone, is out there, and he intends to find it.
If this is a Bigfoot nest, this means we found its home. It can't be that far away. I've been looking for that face-to-face encounter. That's what I'm here for.
But before we go deeper into the woods, it's time to speak with someone who knows this land better than anyone else. Meet Mel Scahin, a veteran of over 25 years in forest management and a respected elder of the Yakima Nation, a Native American tribe that has lived in the Pacific Northwest for thousands of years. His connection to these lands is both professional and ancestral. This isn't just a job for him, it's heritage.
Mel Scahan has worked in forest management for over 25 years and is a respected member of the Native America Yakima tribe.
And in that heritage, Bigfoot is no stranger. To the Yakima people, the Sasquatch has never been a myth. It's been a presence, a being represented in their sacred art, their oral traditions, and passed down through generations as a guardian of the forest. Long before cell phones and trail cams, the ape-like man of the woods was seen, feared, and respected. Mel's insight brings a deeper context to what Russell may have found. He explains that nests like these have been known to exist, and when they appear, it usually means one thing: they're close.
My great-grandfather would tell us the legends of Tetathea, which is also Yakima word for Sasquatch.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Before the migration of the settlers to the west.
Bryce, documenting every step, listens carefully as Mel confirms that the formation Russell discovered resembles those spoken of in tribal lore. Not random shelters, but resting places for something that walks like a man, but isn't one.
This nest had a bunch of branches that were woven together. So whatever did it had hands, thumbs.
That's incredible.
I started looking through this nest. That's when I started finding the hairs.
Meanwhile, back near the nest, Russell presses forward. The forest around him is still, but something's changed. The air tightens. The ground beneath his boots carries vibrations, heavy, rhythmic, could be an elk, maybe. But his instincts say otherwise. His heartbeat spikes, because at that moment, the line between theory and reality begins to blur. What if that nest wasn't abandoned? What if, right now, something weighing 300 to 400 pounds is stalking just out of view, watching, waiting? The search has only just begun, and it's getting closer.
There's something really heavy moving across that soil out there. I can sense it, I can hear it, and I can feel it. It's like where you feel an elk coming towards you before you see it. It's that impact of heavy hooves hitting the ground.
We'll analyze Bigfoot audio recordings and genuine sightings later in this investigation. But first, let's hear from someone who's seen something unforgettable.
Holy. Oh, look, my God.
Will Wagner is no stranger to the wilderness. He's spent years surrounded by nature's most powerful animals. Massive grizzly bears, majestic eagles, towering elk. He's seen them all up close. He knows what real power looks like. But on one summer evening, as he was driving eastbound down a remote highway at 75 miles an hour, something appeared on the right side of the road that froze him in place.
And I've seen a lot of big animals, a lot of big creatures. Big grizzlies, big eagles, everything. And they're powerful, and up close, they're just incredibly phenomenal.
At first, he thought it was a Shetland pony, maybe an Icelandic breed, with thick, dreadlocked hair. But the coloring wasn't right. The coat was a deep red ochre, and the creature's shape was all wrong. Its body was bulky, with a visible belly and long, powerful arms. There was no head where he expected it, just a hulking frame, facing downward. He passed it in seconds, but the image burned into his memory. As he looked into his rearview mirror, the creature leapt, from the ditch, across 2 lanes, landing perfectly in the middle of the highway in a single bound. It stood upright, massive, clearly not a bear or any animal he had ever seen. Then, just as fast, it descended the embankment on the other side, disappearing into the forest. Will had seen incredible animals before, but nothing like this, not even close.
Where the hair still had plenty of distance between that and the ground. Now, this is all I seen as I was driving by at 75 miles an hour. I immediately looked into the rearview mirror.
The adrenaline kicked in, fight or flight. But what stayed with him wasn't the fear, it was the certainty. He didn't imagine it. This thing was real, and it wasn't supposed to be there, but it was. When discussing visual evidence of Sasquatch, one of the most chilling tales comes from the remote ghost town of Portlock, Alaska. Among the many modern sightings and blurry images, few match the terror and consistency of the accounts tied to a mysterious entity known as Nantino. In 1923, a teenage local named Sergius Moonen, then just 16 years old, reported a close encounter while walking along the shore with his girlfriend. They were checking the fish traps left overnight when a sudden piercing whistling sound filled the air. So intense it made their ears ring. This sound was eerily consistent with what locals believed Nantino could produce. A week later, the couple returned to the same area and heard heavy, deliberate footsteps crunching the sand nearby. Peeking over a ridge, they witnessed a towering, hairy creature walking the beach, clutching what looked like a large branch or club. His girlfriend, frozen in fear, nearly screamed before Sergius muffled her with his hand. The creature eventually vanished into the trees. The two ran home to report what they'd seen, but their families dismissed the story. Around the same time, newspapers began reporting similar sightings, creatures lurking near mines, trees ripped from the ground or shoved back upside down. Something was out there.
These incidents, at first dismissed as the imaginings of tired minds, became harder to ignore as they grew more frequent and more terrifying. Some spoke of creatures, tall, shadowy beings that seemed to merge with the forest itself, seen only at the periphery of vision, but leaving behind enormous tracks in the soft earth. Others claimed that the land itself was alive, watching, waiting, as if biding its time.
Beyond the legends, there's a growing collection of modern visual evidence, dozens of alleged sightings captured on video. One of the more recent examples involves a man who usually posts casual TikToks with his wife. But during a solo drive up north, he filmed something unusual on a hill. Even with his phone zoomed in to the maximum, the figure appeared massive, indicating its true size was enormous. The sighting occurred near Whiskers Mountain in Alberta, Canada. Though the footage is shaky due to the extreme zoom, what matters is the figure itself, towering, mysterious, and undeniably there. A genuine, chilling moment. There's much more visual evidence surfacing online.
What is it?
It's a person, dude. No, seriously, pull over, pull over.
No.
There's a person standing there.
No, it's not.
Dude, if you've seen what I've seen right now,
In one particular video, the creature is seen standing still, its broad back clearly visible. What makes it compelling is the distance. It wasn't filmed from very far. The clarity and scale of the figure leave little doubt something unusual was captured. And then there's this footage, shot by Russell at night. You can see the creature subtly shifting between the trees, its silhouette barely hidden in the dark. The way it moves, slow, deliberate, feels instinctive, not staged. It's not usual to witness so many sightings, yet they keep coming. Let's see more. Then there's this thermal footage. The original shooter compiled a series of short clips, some of the clearest moments, and stitched them into a compact reel. All I've done is enlarge, trim, and slow the clips down. No color grading, no exposure tweaks, just raw visuals. And here's the thing. I neck, you neck, we all neck. But a real biggie, no neck at all. That's something you notice in the clearest sightings. A massive head sitting right on broad shoulders. No visible neck. Just bulk, silhouette, and mystery. "15-year-old Lucas from rural Pennsylvania had an unforgettable encounter while hiking with his friend Gavin. They were enjoying a quiet walk in the woods when a sudden foul smell overwhelmed them, like a skunk or something rotting. Moments later, Lucas felt a powerful sensation of being watched. As he scanned the trees, he spotted a large, crouched figure staring back. He quickly snapped a photo and then captured a short video as it stood upright and walked away. It looked humanoid, not like any known animal. Ever since, Lucas has been convinced he witnessed something extraordinary, possibly a Bigfoot lurking in Pennsylvania. Michael Green's now viral squeaky thermal video has stirred up serious conversation in the Bigfoot community. Captured in the Uwharrie National Forest, the thermal footage shows a figure with unusually long arms, broad shoulders, and a slow, deliberate movement pattern. Analysts and skeptics alike agree it doesn't resemble a human. Researchers have pointed out its posture and proportions as being too odd to dismiss. Maybe the creature was searching for food or simply moving through the area, but once it noticed the hidden camera, it quickly lost interest and vanished. Whatever it was, the mystery it left behind is hard to ignore. Now it's time to step into the technical realm. No folklore, no hearsay. Just footage, anatomy, and boots-on-the-ground fieldwork. Todd Standing, a seasoned Sasquatch researcher and filmmaker, has spent years deep in the wild, tracking, documenting, and even interacting with creatures most write off as legend. One of his most striking pieces of footage is of a Sasquatch he calls Jake. Todd highlights the non-human spacing between the eyes, the detailed nasal movement, and the sheer width of the head, about 15 to 16 inches across. "My head is 7 inches across," Todd explains.
It does, but the spacing between the eyes are not human. And if you saw that in real life, you'd realize the head is, 15 inches across, that individual. And again, eye spacing is non-human. And I proved that head, oh my God, but my head is 7 inches across. That head is like 16 inches across. My head fits just over the passage of his nose.
Jake wasn't just a subject, he was, in Todd's words, a friend, even a teacher. But Jake disappeared, possibly off to establish dominance in another territory. Then there's Jane, a female Sasquatch, filmed blinking, moving with subtlety and grace. Todd points out her nurturing, non-aggressive behavior. Her actions are deliberate, unlike the brash movements of males. He explains how she approached cautiously while he remained still in a ghillie suit during a snowstorm in British Columbia.
Big, giant, like egotistical.
Why don't they run away from you?
Right here, she's looking down at me. She's the last line of defense for me going into a position where I was going to get more footage.
Why did they let you get so close?
She didn't. I was moving in a ghillie suit, and I'd come, see there's snow there? I came in, I had success because it was a snowstorm so bad, you couldn't see your hand in front of your face.
She was the final line of defense before he entered deeper territory. And when she realized it was him, she let him be. Even survivor man Les Stroud, the renowned survival expert, has joined Todd on expeditions. He's filmed evidence, unexplainable sounds, massive footprints, and even glimpses of creatures. Off camera, Les admits, "I know all animals, and I can't explain this."
And he's been out there, and he's survivor man again, the greatest outdoor survivalist filmmaker of all time. And he literally goes, I have no explanation for what's out there in the wilderness.
Despite criticism, Todd stands firm. "They're real," he says. "I've seen them. I've filmed them. And if you still doubt it, come with me. I'll show you myself."
It does, but the spacing between the eyes are not human. And if you saw that in real life, you'd realize the head is, 15 inches across. They can know it's real. I wasn't like that. I am now. I can look at something, I can feel the energy of it, and the truth comes out for me. And that's really what I'm here and why I'm exposing this, because they are real and that's the truth. And I will prove it. Come out with me, I show people.
This Canadian man from the YouTube channel Cabin in the Woods had his life changed forever. While out in nature with his wife and daughter, he witnessed a Bigfoot with his own eyes. He wasn't a believer until he had no choice but to face the reality of what he saw.
I know that Bigfoot exists because I've seen more than one of them. But what about all the Bigfoot skeptics out there? In this video, I'm going to logically examine each and every point that Bigfoot skeptics raise, and I'm going to logically debunk every single one of them.
Since then, he's dedicated his time to investigating evidence and dismantling the doubts that once lived in his own mind. In his recent video, he sets out to logically dismantle the most common arguments from Bigfoot skeptics.
Now, there are solid reasons why I came to this conclusion, and I'll share all of those a little later in this video. But first, I thought I'd give a brief recap and a new additional perspective on the encounters that I had from my daughter's point of view.
The first is the lack of officially documented physical evidence: bones, fossils, DNA. He counters this by explaining that fossilization is extremely rare, especially in wet, forested environments. Even known animals like gorillas, cougars, and bears have scarce fossil records in their current habitats. Decomposition in remote areas happens fast. Scavengers and weather conditions erase remains quickly, sometimes within days. When it comes to DNA, yes, samples have been collected, but most are contaminated or inconclusive. However, some hair samples show characteristics consistent with an unknown non-human primate. The second argument is the absence of a captured or killed Bigfoot. He reminds us that many large creatures, like the giant squid or the okapi, evaded official recognition for centuries. If Bigfoot is intelligent and adapted to avoid humans, and given the 300 million acres of untouched North American wilderness, it's not hard to imagine why one hasn't been caught. After all, how often do we find the bodies of wild bears? The woods keep their secrets. What if I told you that nearly every argument skeptics use to deny Bigfoot's existence has already been dismantled? By science, by credible evidence, and by countless eyewitness accounts they refuse to acknowledge. From footprints to thermal footage, DNA studies to historic legends, the evidence has grown too vast to ignore. The sheer volume of sightings, the consistency in descriptions, and the strange patterns observed in isolated regions all point to one thing: something is out there. Take Jimmy Akin, for example. Once a firm skeptic, he believed Bigfoot was just another modern myth.
Where I am not as confident of my position as I was.
Can you tell us what that is?
Bigfoot.
Okay.
Initially, And there was a minor factual, I think, issue in that show where this was like our third episode or something.
But over time, something changed his mind. As he dove deeper into the data, interviews, and field research, his stance shifted. He now believes that there's a real possibility Bigfoot exists.
So in addition to the Patterson-Gimlin film, there's been a lot of additional evidence that can be cited in favor of a Bigfoot in North America being real.
So, are we looking for a short answer? If yes, then maybe they do exist. In the end, belief in Bigfoot isn't just about chasing shadows. It's about listening to those who've seen, heard, and experienced things they can't explain, and wondering if perhaps the unknown isn't fiction, but an undiscovered fact quietly walking among us. The mystery lives on, waiting. Before we dive into the deep, restricted forests, let's shift gears. I don't blindly vouch for every sighting or story. For those who lean on logic, let's hear from the researchers. Alexander Patikoff, a filmmaker and field investigator, makes a compelling case for Bigfoot in Alaska. According to him, if there's any place left on Earth where a massive, elusive primate could exist undetected, it's here. Alaska is still the frontier, remote, wild, and largely untouched. It holds a special place in people's minds as the last real escape. And for many who don't even follow the Bigfoot phenomenon, the idea of Sasquatch surviving out there just makes sense. But it's not just about mystery, it's about biology. Alaska's environment is ideal. Vast stretches of temperate rainforest, rich ecosystems, and thriving salmon runs provide a steady food supply. Just like grizzlies, Sasquatches, if real, would thrive here as omnivores. From the Kenai Peninsula to the Kodiak Islands, and even up into southeast Canada, the landscape offers perfect cover and abundant resources. It's not proof, but it's logic. And if we're going to investigate this seriously, we can't ignore the geography or the science behind survival.
In terms of pluses and minuses of something like Sasquatch being discovered in Alaska, I think it just makes sense. I think most people probably wouldn't be surprised because Alaska has that reputation, that mystique.
To truly investigate the Bigfoot mystery, we have to look beyond campfire stories. We need behavior, patterns, survival logic. And that's where researcher Heidi Worley steps in. Known for her grounded scientific approach, Heidi doesn't chase shadows. She follows ecological sense. Looking at other predator behavior, she sees no reason Sasquatch wouldn't follow similar survival instincts.
If you look at other predator behavior, I have no reason to believe Sasquatch would not follow those same types of behavior. I do believe that Bigfoot are omnivorous.
She believes Bigfoot, like bears, are omnivorous and opportunistic. Most credible sightings, both historical and modern, tend to cluster around August and September, and that's not random. During this time, berries ripen in abundance. Blueberries, high bush cranberries, sees all calorie-dense fuel for winter preparation. And in the far north, it also happens to coincide with caribou migration. If you're a predator or scavenger, you go where the food moves. And Bigfoot, if it exists, is no exception. Worley suggests that Sasquatch could follow migrating herds and linger in areas dense with seasonal nutrition, just as grizzlies do. In fact, the overlap between Bigfoot sightings and berry-rich terrain is striking.
I definitely believe that Sasquatch tend to follow caribou herds for food, and I think they're also in those same areas because that's also where there's a lot of berries, blueberries, high bush cranberries.
Combine that with terrain so harsh that few humans can endure it, and you've got the perfect storm, a creature built for stealth, feeding smart, and hiding where few dare to look. In June 2018, Jen and Gina, also known as the She-Squatchers, headed out to a remote, swampy bog in Minnesota after hearing about a possible Bigfoot sighting. According to the witness, they'd seen something big and mysterious moving between two groups of trees deep in the wetlands. Knowing how risky it would be to hike through that kind of terrain, the two decided not to go in blindly. Instead, they found a safer spot nearby, and set up with their night vision gear, hoping to spot something from a distance. For hours they scanned the area through the darkness, eyes locked on the patch of woods where the sighting was reported.
The recording of the, Can you see it?
The bog was too tough to cross that night, but even from a distance, they stayed alert in hopes for any sign that the stories might be true. Just as Jen and Gina were about to pack up and call it a night, something strange and completely unexpected caught their eyes. Deep in the trees, just where the Bigfoot had supposedly been seen, lights started to flicker and move.
This is interesting. Can you see it? Is it there? That's weird. It's moving.
These weren't the kind of lights you'd mistake for flashlights or reflections. They shifted and darted, as if they had a mind of their own. The two women stared, stunned, then quickly turned their night vision camera back on and aimed it at the strange display. They managed to capture some of it on video, watching the lights float and pulse in ways that made no sense. Trying to make sense of it, Jen pulled up satellite images to check for roads or houses nearby, or anything that might explain what they were seeing. But there was nothing. No roads, no cabins.
Can't see any of them now. But I'm getting it on tape. Now it's toward the bottom. Can you see it?
No signs of human activity at all. Just marshland and trees. And then, just when they thought the night couldn't get weirder, it did. As they were getting ready to leave and turned off their night vision camera, the lights inside their car suddenly flickered on and off. Not once, but 3 times, on their own. There was no one touching the controls. The timing was creepy, and it left them shocked.
I can see one. There was 2. It's moving through.
Wondering if it was somehow connected to the lights they had just seen in the bog. They couldn't say for sure what had happened, but one thing was crystal clear. The whole experience was deeply disturbing. Whatever was out there, it wasn't something they could explain, and it only added to the growing mystery surrounding the Minnesota Bigfoot. A crew member of the YouTube channel Sunny Vader went on a solitary 4-day and night exploration to a remote winter campsite deep within the Canadian Rockies. This wasn't just a camping trip. It was an investigation into unsettling events that had forced a local native band to abandon Spirit Camp, a sacred site once used for ceremonies. Some of the recently occurring disturbing instances, including alleged body tampering, strange vocalizations, and unconfirmed sightings, had made the area too spooky even for those who had lived there. The crew members' mission was to discover clues, spending days in the snow-capped landscape, observing strange drawings etched into trees, and looking at the prancing deer. He gathered wood to help build fires for warmth, going through both day and night in the isolated, freezing environment. His constant determination in the snow-covered paths, surrounded by the unsettling history of the site, set the stage for an unexplainable encounter with the unknown. As night fell over the silent, snow-covered terrain, the camper's senses were heightened by the extreme quiet and bitter cold. He was alone, fully immersed in an environment that had driven a native band away due to incidents that could not be understood. The crisp air carried every distant sound, and the stark white of the snow made every shadow appear massive. He maintained his camp, keeping the fire going for warmth and protection, while his recording equipment silently monitored the freezing surroundings. The isolation was intense, broken only by the natural sounds of the wild forest. Then, in the dead of night, the silence was destroyed. The camper was suddenly awakened by a strange sound coming from the darkness beyond his camp. It was unlike any animal sound he recognized, which was deep, guttural, and yet somehow appeared intelligent. The sound sliced through the cold air, raising the hair on the nape of his neck. This was exactly the kind of strange sounds that had been reported at Spirit Camp, one of the key reasons the local band had left the site. He lay still, listening intently as the chilling sound echoed across the frozen landscape. That moment confirmed everything he'd heard about Spirit Camp. The eerie stillness, the odd markings on trees he'd noticed earlier, the jittery deer, they'd all hinted at something just out of sight. But it was the sound that night, raw and impossible to explain, that truly shook him. After spending 4 long days and nights alone at what was once a sacred ceremonial burial ground, he was sure of one thing: something was still there. And maybe that's why some places, no matter how meaningful, are better left alone. They were never alone. Something stood just beyond the trees, still, silent, watching. The camera caught it first, a face, hidden deep in the cover, peering between 2 wide tree trunks during the Wairika Bigfoot investigation. No one saw it in the moment. Not Johnny, not Duke. But frame by frame, it appeared. A broad, domed head, dark hairline, skin mottled in gray and brown. The mouth, it moves. A grimace, then a slack expression, then what looked like a frown before the head pulls back and disappears. Watch this clip closely, right here.
Tracks, structures, and Sasquatch. One of the goals of the expedition was to film comparison footage at the location Jen, Duke, and Kelly captured of what appeared to be at least 2 Sasquatch watching them from cover.
That stare? Impossible to miss once you see it. They weren't just poking around blindly. Duke and Johnny from World Bigfoot TV were drawn to that exact slope by loud vocalizations from above. Same area where, weeks before, Duke, Jen, and Kelly had captured shadowy figures peeking from the brush. Johnny's lens swept the same trees, and in just under 4 seconds, in 25 tight frames, that hidden face was frozen in time. And the ground? It confirmed everything. Huge footprints, some up to 19 inches long, 8.5 inches wide, stamped deep into the hillside. 2 trackways, one headed downhill toward a creek, the other climbing up the steep terrain. Each impression crushed deep into the dirt, the toes, the heel, the way the weight drove it all down. Something massive had walked that path, nimble enough to scale, but heavy enough to leave craters behind. Take a look at this.
Or longer, but yeah, whatever it was heavy as that went up right there. This one's about 19 inches in length, and you can see where one of the toes really...
You'll see the depth, the stride, the unmistakable marks of something far too large to be human. And it didn't end there. Not far from that site, on the next mountain range, Duke's team caught more than tracks. A wood knock echoed, then a face, staring from a small window in the foliage, just long enough to be seen before slipping away. The brow ridge, the dark eyes, the bulk of the head. It was there, just for a heartbeat. Watch this part.
I will link it in the description. The expedition group is investigating a large suspect Bigfoot structure complex. As the group walks off, this large Bigfoot wood knocks.
Blink and you'll miss it, but slow it down and that massive figure is staring right through the clearing. And then, the rarest capture of all, a Sasquatch, possibly caught in the act of wood knocking. Behind a leaning log, movement. A dark shape reaches, knocks, then hides again. See for yourself.
We will show off some of the better 19-inch tracks we found in 2 separate trackways. One trackway went down the mountain toward the creek, the other went up toward...
One knock, one glance, then it's gone. They tracked them uphill, downhill. Footprints, vocalizations, wood knocks. The signs were everywhere. And that face? That moment Johnny unknowingly filmed a watchful Sasquatch hiding in plain sight. It sticks with you, so here's the question. How many times have we been watched in the woods, never knowing? Could these giants be watching from just beyond the trees, waiting for us to look the other way? They came for an overnight challenge, but something else was already there, watching. The ground was frozen, the air sharp and biting. Yet deep in the Canadian wilds, Mo Sargi and his team pressed on, unknowingly stepping straight into a forest locals whisper about, the Sasquatch Forest. Some call it the Yeti Forest. Call it what you want, but something massive was stalking these woods. Not long after they arrived, Mo spotted it. Huge claw prints in the dirt, wide and deep. Nothing like a bear or wolf. Watch this part.
Yo, how did you find the tree, bro?
Bro, it's an entire tree.
Guys, I'm looking for Bigfoot right now. We heard the noises.
Oh, that's a deep claw print, bro. That's a big one.
This one too, this one's
Oh my God.
Right here. The size of those prints? Unreal. His hand barely covered half of one claw mark, and they weren't alone. More prints trailed off into the dark, vanishing into the trees. But instead of turning back, they built shelter right there, over a hollowed pit in the earth, a makeshift teepee of fallen logs, crafted fast as night crept in. The wind cut sharp, the sky darkened, and something stirred. Off camera, coyotes howled far off, but closer. Closer was heavier. Around 3 a.m., loud, heavy footsteps pounded near the camp, waking Mo from sleep. Not coyotes, not deer. Something big enough to shake the ground. See for yourself. Watch this clip closely.
I hear it.
It's literally coming from all around.
What's over there?
You'll hear it, that distinct thump of weight crashing through the forest. Whatever it was didn't stick around, but the feeling of being watched never left. Morning didn't bring comfort, just more signs. As daylight bled through the trees, they spotted more claw prints in the frozen ground, lined up just yards from where they slept. Massive impressions, deep as if something heavy, something deliberate had paced right past their fort, while they lay vulnerable inside. Take a look at this.
Look at this one. This one's clearer.
Look at this
Are there
one
any
right
more?
here.
There's more?
This one's more perfect than the other ones.
The There's another one right there.
Another one right here too.
The tracks cut through the sand and ice, clawed deep and wide. Too symmetrical, too precise to be random. Mo's shock is clear. You can hear it in his breath as he tries to make sense of it. They counted multiple prints, spaced in a stride too wide for any human or known animal.
Yo, this is probably what we were hearing last
And there are these weird big claw marks on the ground. Look, there's another one. That's a deep one.
That one's really deep.
Holy, that's a deep claw print, bro.
The forest held its secrets, but the team felt it. Something had been circling, watching, deciding. Even the landscape felt strange. Patches of frozen ice beside green, mossy clearings. Like the forest itself shifted moods from one corner to the next. Their exit was clumsy, ice cracking underfoot, bridges of branches snapping in hand. Yet the unease never left. Mo even joked about logs looking like bears. But that's the mind's trick when it knows something's near but can't see it. One last glance back, one last stretch of frozen quiet, and they were gone. But the claw prints remained, fresh, precise, like warnings or an invitation. What creature stalked them that night? A massive unknown predator? Or the very legend of Sasquatch itself? You decide. Would you camp here knowing those claws passed inches from your shelter? Or would you run at the first sound? Let us know in the comments, because some forests don't forget who steps inside. Something was watching from the holler. Just beyond the pear trees, where the land dips low and the air hangs heavy, a footprint lay pressed deep in the earth. Not just any footprint, an old, weathered track molded into the ground like a silent marker of something still roaming these woods. 2 hours before the camera rolled, the cast went down, sealing the imprint before time could erase it. The excitement? Palpable. Every second spent waiting to lift the mold was a mix of anticipation and unease. See for yourself.
Came down and I plaster casted this. The reason that I do this, a lot of people don't, but I put sticks and stuff in because it's kind of like...
You can make out the arch, the spread of the toes, half buried in damp soil, waiting to tell its story. This isn't the first time. That stretch of land holds a reputation. Eye-shine flickers from the tree line at dusk. Low whoops echo back when the air turns still. Right up the slope, past the orchard, that's where the activity peaks. Night after night, eyes blink from the dark, reflecting the flashlight's beam. The old trail leading deeper in? More prints have been found along that path before. Watch this clip closely.
I've actually gotten a lot of stuff up in there. And down that little trail, I have found footprints. These are persimmon and pear trees, and this one's an apple tree.
The trees sway gently, almost as if hiding something just out of frame. Down by the apple and pear trees, it always seems to happen in spring and summer, as if the warmer air brings them closer. The prints, the sounds, the presence just past the edge of sight. And every time, there's that familiar pull to document, to preserve what little evidence remains before the forest reclaims it. That's why the cast was reinforced with sticks, like rebar in concrete, ensuring it holds together when pulled from the earth.
Just a little information on how to cast your footprints. And also when you do, you make it kind of the same consistency as you do pancake syrup.
A little trick to keep the story intact when others might crumble. But even before it's lifted, the shape is undeniable. Toes clearly defined, the curve of the foot captured in stone-like plaster. Once it's out, the details will pop, but already, the mind races. What was it doing here? Passing through or watching? The lower half of the property has always felt different, charged, as if the woods themselves know they're being observed just as much as they're hiding a watcher. Take a look at this.
Stuff, but here it is one more time. You can see back in here the toes. You'll be able to see it better once I pull it out of the ground.
The camera lingers on the cast, still wet, still fragile, but unmistakable in form. You can almost feel the gaze from the tree line, a heavy presence that never truly leaves. As night creeps back in, the mind can't help but wonder, will the whoops return? Will those eyes blink from the dark again? Or did the creature leave more than just a footprint this time? What would you do if you found a track like this on your own land? Would you dig deeper or run the other way? In the deep, dark woods of the southern United States, wildlife like deer, turkey, and bear roam freely. But beyond these familiar creatures, something far more unexpected has made its existence known. A creature that residents whisper about, but few have truly seen.
A lot of people have their dogs killed, had their chickens killed. I know a family down around Red Bluff area down by Columbia. They lost 7 or 8 geese. A coyote is not going to mess with a goose.
The documentary begins with the mention of the chilling incidents from the Red Bluff area, where families have suffered attacks that cannot be explained. One household story is how they lost nearly a dozen geese in a single night. The birds weren't torn apart like a predator might do in a hurry. Instead, something, or shall we say, someone, had plucked the geese, laying the feathers in a very neat pile before vanishing with the bodies. A coyote, the locals tried to believe, wouldn't bother geese in a group, let alone exhibit such calculated behavior. But the creepiness increases.
They actually heard something beating on the side of their house one night, and something peeked in on their 8-year-old daughter and looked in the window at their daughter. The daughter described it as a big gorilla-looking thing.
Soon, we hear the story of a family in North Mississippi whose home was not only stalked but also physically attacked. One night, loud banging on the side of their house woke them up. What followed was even more terrifying, as their 8-year-old daughter saw a creature looking in through her bedroom window. Described as a beast resembling a gorilla, it had to hunch to see through the chest-height windowsill.
Now, the bottom of the windowsill, is about chest high. So this thing was leaned over and hunched over and looking in the window.
Its interest wasn't just for a second or so. The very next night, something returned with more violent intentions. That follows the moment that has shocked Bigfoot hunters to this day.
Something had gone out there and picked up an outside air conditioning unit and threw it 30 feet across the yard. The first dent in the ground was 20 feet away. So something threw this thing 20 feet in the air before it hit the ground and rolled another 10 feet.
The family's outdoor air conditioning unit, which is a heavy, grounded machine, was thrown 30 feet across the yard. The first impact mark was found 20 feet from where it originally was installed, suggesting it had been thrown through the air before coming to a halt. Whatever or whoever did that had to possess immense strength and, more importantly, an opposable thumb to even be able to grab the unit. Bears, despite being a constant in Mississippi, just don't have the agility or the temperament for such calculated action. Locals know this. They've seen bears. They know what a bear is capable of doing and what not. These are not once-in-a-while events, but part of a growing pattern in the South.
And it takes an opposable thumb to be able to pick something up and throw it. A bear can't, it's not gonna pick it up. It would swat it away. And there are a lot of bears in Mississippi. They are making a big comeback, but this was not a bear.
Families are now hesitant to even step outside after dusk without a firearm. The forests they once explored freely now inspire a primal fear. These are not stories once told to scare off kids. These are testimonies from men and women who have lived through something inexplicable. And as one seasoned witness says, "A human didn't do this, a bear couldn't do this, but something sure did." The Marble Mountains, a rocky, roadless stretch of wilderness in far northern California, seem very breathtaking, but only some know that they can actually be very unforgiving. With no cell phone signals, no roads, and no help if things go wrong, it's not a place you explore casually. It's a place for those who trust the land, or those who are ready to risk not coming back. Years ago, Wilson did just that. Invited on a multi-night pack trip into the Marble Mountains by an outdoorsy woman he met on a camping trip, he couldn't say no. After all, how often does someone get an invite to explore deep wilderness with horses, clear blue skies, and just one companion?
I remember everything was really quiet, which wasn't uncommon for there. All of a sudden, that silence was broken by a deep, loud, throaty roar.
But what began as a serene adventure gradually turned creepy. On their final morning, while washing the breakfast dishes behind an alpine lake, the peaceful atmosphere was violently shattered as a guttural howl sliced through the canyon. It was so loud, so primal that it echoed across the walls of the canyon like something out of this world. Our narrator, frozen in shock, was struck by the impossible quality of the sound. It wasn't a bear, it wasn't a wolf, and it definitely wasn't human. He describes the howl as something he'd never heard in the wild, except perhaps the howler monkeys he once encountered in Costa Rica. But this was Northern California, not Central America.
The howler monkeys in Costa Rica did not sound like any animal I've ever heard around here. I remember a long time ago listening to the Art Bell radio show. Some people sent him some recordings of what were supposed to be Bigfoot yells.
He recalls something similar, an audio clip played on Art Bell's legendary paranormal radio show. Recordings sent in by listeners who claimed they captured Bigfoot yells in the wild. The similarity sent chills down his spine then, and again now, just mentioning it. What's more disturbing is his companion's reaction. She said nothing. She simply stood up, began packing the horses, and didn't speak a word during the long ride back to civilization.
I could tell she was just on a mission to get out of there. It wasn't until we were back at the trailhead, we loaded up the horses into the trailer, we were back on the road, safely driving back home.
We do get the idea that this sound was something extraordinary. After days of easygoing conversation, laughter, and friendship, the woman suddenly made a decision. focused only on getting out. Only once they reached the safety of the truck and began driving did she finally speak. That's when she confessed to a previous Bigfoot encounter she had that had left her shaken. And just before this trip, she had binged Bigfoot shows, triggering her old fears. The howl, she admitted, came from the very ridge they had to cross to exit the valley. She hadn't panicked because he hadn't.
That's when she told me about a Bigfoot encounter she had a few years earlier. She was out in the woods, hunting, I think. She laid up against a tree to take a nap, woke up to something running into the woods.
But if she'd been alone, she said, she would have completely lost it. She made another startling revelation. She had known from the start that he owned firearms and that he would likely bring them. It was, in hindsight, one of the reasons she asked him to join her. She didn't want to go into Bigfoot country alone, not without someone who came adequately armed. By the end, he doesn't believe it was Bigfoot. He doesn't even jump to conclusions. But the question hangs in the air like fog clinging to pine. If not Bigfoot, then what? Every trail we followed led deeper into the unknown, and every answer only raised more questions. The nests, the screams, the footage, the footprints, the DNA, the sightings from people who've never met, describing the same creature. So maybe the skeptics were never wrong. They were just looking in the wrong direction. Because in the silence of the deep woods, something is still moving. The truth is closer than we think, and it's watching.